What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to JWise Adventures. You guys are the best, you guys are amazing. Remember, you can accomplish anything you put your mind to. In this video, we got how to beat the death game in The Hunger Games by Cinema Summary. I remember the Hunger Games movie, great movie. A lot of people in the conspiracy theory type of lane think the world is headed to like a Hunger Games type of world, you know what I'm saying? Which is crazy to think about. But it was a crazy, all of the movies were super crazy and great movies. We gonna see how Cinema Summary breaks down and analyzes this one, y'all. If you're new to the channel, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let's get this video to 100 likes. I'd really appreciate it, guys. Without any further ado, let's go.
If you are trapped in a brutal death game where children are forced to kill each other for sport, what would you do? I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the death game in the Hunger Games. Katniss here is hunting for food to sell at the market when she spots a deer in the distance. But as she draws her bow for the kill, someone behind her scares the creature off. It's her friend Gale, and he points out that they'll be late for the reaping ceremony. Every year, 2 children from the ages of 12 to 18 are taken to compete in a brutal death game that's televised across the country, and they have no choice but to obey. The entire district has gathered to the town square, but Katniss is worried that her little sister might be drafted. She's just turned 12 and is now old enough to be chosen to compete in the mandatory death games. Primrose here is terrified, but her sister calms her down, telling the girl that everything will be okay, and they separate as the ceremony starts. That's when the announcer walks into the stage, and after greeting the district residents, she begins to draw a name for the bowl. Opening the card, the woman announces that Primrose has been chosen to compete, and the girl goes into shock. It's her worst nightmare come true, and Katniss here knows that her sister doesn't stand a chance of surviving. Terrified, the girl walks towards the stage, but before she makes it to the front, her sister Katniss runs forward and yells that she will go instead. She's just volunteered her life to protect her sister, and the crowd is shocked. Nervous, she walks up to the announcer and takes her place on the stage. With the female tribute selected, the woman then draws the name of the male representative and announces that this boy Peeta has been chosen to compete. Overwhelmed, he walks forward to join Katniss on the stage, officially becoming District 12's tributes for the 74th Annual Hunger Games. Okay, as admirable as it was to save her sister's life, this was a huge mistake, because we probably have the worst chance of beating the Hunger Games out of all the other districts. These people are starving, and due to a lack of food and nutrition, we'll be at a physical disadvantage before we even enter the game. The odds are not in our favor, and volunteering to compete is a death sentence. Now, to be fair, I wouldn't let my 12-year-old sister be chosen either, but I would try a couple things first before volunteering myself in her place. We should consider what other options we have, and that means it's time to start burning bridges. If I were in this situation, I would try to guilt trip Gale here into volunteering in order to protect Prim. Katniss knows this.
Let him simp for us. Okay.
The boy has a massive crush on her, and I would have tried to cash that in to save my sister's life.
Okay.
He could try to take her place and ask the announcer to find another female candidate, or join Prim in the Hunger Games to keep her safe. This kid is bigger and more muscular than almost everyone in the entire district, so he has the best chance of surviving by far. When you combine that with the realization that he entered his own name into the draft 42 times in hopes of getting more food, it almost makes sense that he should have been chosen anyways. Men have done stranger things for love, and I'll be damned if we don't at least try. But there's actually a great way to beat these controlling institutions without costing you your life. Current is a new kind of banking that is built to give you flexibility, faster money, and freedom in your life.
Use that banking system.
The Sleek Visa debit card that is district. Current takes up to speed of your paycheck.
Shout out to this man, brand deal.
Big thanks to Current for sponsoring this video.
Shout out to the
sponsor. Now, there's one thing that's easy to overlook here. As horrifying as it all seems, if we step back and look at this objectively, it's not hard to make the argument that as far as oppressive regimes go, this is a pretty sweet deal. For comparison, Chairman Mao encouraged the murder of every landlord in the country, started the worst famine in human history, and killed as many as 50 million people in the process. This is statistically far worse than living in District 12, and we can use math to prove it.
It's worse than the Hunger Games?
Let's take a look at the demographics of this place. District 12 has a population of about 10,000 people, and considering that their kids are reaped into death games every year, it's reasonable to think that nobody would want to have children. But surprisingly, this isn't true. Peeta has 2 older brothers, Katniss has a younger sister, and Gale has 3 younger siblings. There are tons of kids here, and as counterintuitive as it seems, this actually makes sense. On average, poor families tend to have more kids to maximize their combined family income, and this is probably why there are so many children in the population. With this in mind, we can make a reasonable guess that the birth rate in District 12 could be about 2.5 children per family. Now this matters a lot, because the more children there are, the less likely you will get selected to compete in the Hunger Games. With 10,000 people living in this district, the age group of 12 to 18 could represent 20% of the population. That means your chances of being picked for the Hunger Games are about 1 in 1,000. For perspective, the murder rate in Tijuana, Mexico is 134 per 100,000. So there are higher odds of you being murdered there than being picked in the Hunger Games. It's obviously a horrible place to live, but let's give credit where credit is due. As far as oppressive regimes go, this could be so much worse.
It's not as bad?
The players are taken aboard a train headed for the capital.
If you say the statistics like that, I guess so.
Regimes go, this could be so much worse. The players are taken aboard a train headed for the capital, and the woman tells them that they'll be mentored by a man named Haymitch, the only person from their district who has won a Hunger Game before. That's when he suddenly walks into the train carriage and turns to look at this year's newest tributes, but the man looks unimpressed. He pours himself a drink before sitting down in the chair across from them, and Peeta jumps right in. He immediately asks the man for advice on how to survive the Hunger Games, but Haymitch tells them to accept the fact that they will die and there's nothing he can do to help. Katniss is skeptical of the man's advice, but Peeta insists he's their only hope of surviving, and their mentor stumbles back towards his cabin, leaving the tributes by themselves. That night in her train car, she watches footage of the previous Death Games, and the girl realizes she has no chance of surviving. She needs advice if she wants any hope of staying alive, and there's only one person that can help her. The next morning, Katniss wakes up and approaches the train car to find Peeta talking with their mentor over breakfast. Walking in, she asks Haymitch what advice he has for them, and he tells the kids that the single most important strategy is to get viewers to like them. This will catch the attention of sponsors who can send useful items to the players during the game. It can make the difference between life or death, and the girl is not happy with this answer. Okay, Haymitch here has actually survived the Hunger Games, and if we aren't trying to squeeze as much information out of him as possible, then we're not going to survive. Right. This guy was not enthusiastic about his role of being a mentor, but we have to look at this from a different perspective. Haymitch won the Hunger Games 23 years ago, and since then, nobody from District 12 has survived. That means he's watched 46 tributes die under his mentorship, and if that doesn't make you want to consume as much alcohol as you can find, then I don't know what will. He doesn't want to get close to the tributes because he knows they're probably going to get killed. So the best way to extract information from him is to make him feel like the most important person on the planet. By feeding his ego, we'll be able to get more advice, and he might make a better effort in helping us survive the Hunger Games. If it were me, I would have asked him how he won the game and if we should use the same strategy. Now, if they had asked this question, they would have discovered that Haymitch here actually survived by teaming up with another player and walked to the edge of the arena where they hid from the fighting until the other tributes killed each other off. It's a smart strategy, and even if there was some luck involved, it still takes good decisions and skill to win this game. This dude is a total badass, and since he's one of only 73 people to come out of it alive, we need to learn as much from him as we can. Now, besides Haymitch, there's another crucial source of information that I would be looking for as soon as we arrive at the capital. The Hunger Games has 73 years of historical records with data that we can analyze to figure out the most common mistakes that players have made in the past. We would also be able to see which past tributes earned the most sponsors and what they did to earn the audience's approval. Studying their methods and copying them is going to give us the best chance at familiarizing ourselves with the tactics in this game. And
in college, one of the best quotes a teacher taught me is like, follow in the footsteps of someone that's already been successful. You know what I'm saying?
Copying them is going to give us the best chance at familiarizing ourselves with the tactics in this game, and we'll be more prepared than anyone else. This is one of the most unique death games you'll ever see, because how we play is just as important as winning. So pure survival skills aren't enough to do the trick, and the more information we have at our disposal, the better chances we have to succeed. They arrive in the capital city, where a crowd has gathered to see the tributes, and Peeta here waves at the group, but Katniss refuses to play along. Later, the girl meets her personal stylist, Cinna, who tells her that tonight they have an opportunity to make a lasting impression. There will be a parade where the tributes will be sent out to greet the audience, and it's the perfect chance to find a sponsor for the Hunger Games. That night, the parade begins, and the audience stands up to applaud as they're officially introduced to this year's tributes. The players wave from their chariots, but that's when something catches President Snow's eye. At the end of the line, Katniss and Peeta enter the hall with fire trailing from their costumes. It's nothing like they've ever seen before, and the crowd cheers loudly, but Katniss is
Super happy
overwhelmed
to
from
see
all
that.
the attention. That's when Peeta here suddenly gets a clever idea, and grabbing
Old
her
hands.
hand, he raises it into the air. The audience begins to go wild, and in one single night, Katniss and Peeta have just become the most popular players, but things are about to take a turn for the worse. The next day, all the tributes are gathered in the same room, and for 2 weeks, they'll be
They're
forced to go
training.
through intense training to prepare for the Hunger Games. As the players begin their exercises, Peeta and Katniss finally get to see what their opponents are made of, and they're shocked. Some of these tributes are extremely
Super
prepared, and they
smart.
realize that their competition
Super
is a lot more
strong.
dangerous than they thought. That night, Katniss and Peeta join Haymitch
Bit like JoJo characters, y'all.
for dinner, and he explains that some of their opponents are career tributes. These are players who have been training for the Hunger Games from a young age, and they win it nearly every year. Peeta is worried, but their mentor explains that their biggest weakness is arrogance, and these two will need to exploit it if they want to beat them. Later that week, the game designers
idea.
summon each tribute to evaluate their skills, and it's finally Katniss's turn to show them what she can do. Entering a large room, she sees a bow has been prepared for her and walks up to grab the weapon. Katniss announces her name, getting the attention of the game designer, and the judges turn to watch as she takes aim, but her first arrow completely misses the target. The men laugh and continue talking, but Katniss doesn't give up. She tries again, firing her
Goes
second
again.
arrow, and it lands a perfect
Bullseye.
bullseye, but none of the judges were paying attention. They're more interested in their stuffed pig, and that makes the girl furious. She draws her bow one last time,
Shoots
and
the
fires a
stuffed
third arrow
pig.
right through the apple in the pig's mouth, pinning it to the wall. The judges are shocked, and she sarcastically thanks them for their consideration before walking away. Okay, these Hunger Games are no joke, and for the first time, Katniss is realizing what she needs to do in order to succeed. This game is not just about winning, it's about entertaining. That means it's actually a disadvantage if you don't care what people think, because public perception can make the difference between
Means the
living
most.
and dying. Peeta here is the only one that's taking full advantage, and he's been the fastest to adapt by far. Now in the book, Katniss actually made an effort to thrill the audience by being flirtatious and blowing kisses from her chariot. That's a step in the right direction, but we can take this tactic much
Even
further.
further.
If gaining sponsors relies on your likability, then I would be going out of my way to get the public's attention by any means necessary. The great thing is, there's already a successful model of this that we can draw lessons from, because we see the same tactics in just about every professional sport. For
Michael
example,
Jordan.
Michael Jordan was notorious for crafting a narrative before a big game. If someone scored 37 points against his team, he would take it personally and come back to score the same amount of points in one half. Now, one of the biggest reasons people love sports like the WWE is not just
Professional
because of the
wrestling.
game, but the melodrama that leads up to the match. These players talk so much
The
trash that
storyline.
it polarizes the audience to choose which side they're on, and the narrative itself becomes the reason to even care about who wins. That's exactly where we want to put the audience. And coming from District 12, we
entertaining.
actually have a lot working in our favor here. First of all, we're among the smallest and poorest of the 12 districts, which means we are the official underdogs. If you look at this board here, you'll see that Katniss and Peeta have some of the worst odds among any of the tributes.
23 to
But this
1,
makes
wow.
for a great narrative if we spin it the right
underdog
way.
story.
Everyone loves an underdog story, and
I do too, because I feel like I'm an underdog.
this makes for a great narrative if we spin it the right way. Everyone
Love
loves
the
an underdog
underdog
story,
story.
and we can use
Wanna
this
see-
to our advantage.
love seeing
to do
somebody
this,
come from
I would
nothing,
start
bro.
talking trash about the person with the best odds on the board and how he's too soft to be a tribute. Now, you might think this makes us unlikable, but as soon as I construct a narrative like this, everyone will be interested in watching us go against him. The media will fuel this into a frenzy, and before long, this stunt would turn into a news story that would be the talk of the town.
Okay.
That's what we want to happen, and as long as all eyes are on us, we're going to be much better off. Like the old saying goes, there's
Wolf
no
of Wall
such thing
Street.
as bad press. And as long as people are talking about you, they won't be talking about anyone else.
All publicity is
That
good
night,
publicity.
all the contestants are interviewed on live TV for one last chance to impress the audience. When it's finally Katniss's turn, she nervously walks into the stage, but is so overwhelmed by the spotlight that she can't hear the presenter's first question. The man laughs it off, asking her about the dress, and that's when Katniss stands up, ready to make an impression. The girl spins around, and the hem of her dress suddenly catches fire. The audience is blown away by the girl. She's won the whole crowd over in a single move and goes backstage where Haymitch congratulates her. Katniss is doing far better than he could have imagined. But that's when they hear the presenter call Peeta to the stage, and he's about to do something completely unexpected. The presenter interviews him, and this kid is totally prepared for the spotlight.
So
but when the
on
man
point.
asks if he's got a girlfriend, the boy gets serious, confessing that he's had a crush on Katniss for years. After the show, she confronts him and demands to know why he said that, but their mentor rushes in and pulls her away. He explains that Peeta has done her a huge favor because
works.
this love story just made them more popular than ever. The next
works.
day, the Hunger Games officially begin, and Katniss meets with her stylist before she's sent to the arena. He gives her a jacket that has a Mockingjay pin on it, and even though it's against the rules, he wants to show her that he believes she has what it takes to win. With time running out, Katniss enters this glass elevator and is lifted up towards the combat arena. The elevator surfaces
Always great
above
to have
ground,
people
and
on
she
your
finds
side.
herself in the middle of a huge opening with all the other competitors lined up beside her. In front of them is a cornucopia-shaped structure with supplies laying all over the field, and Katniss notices a bow and arrow in the distance. When the timer hits 0, everyone starts rushing in for the weapons, but Peeta here breaks
Go
for the
the
woods in
other
the
way,
opposite direction.
like he
Katniss
did.
slows down to evaluate the situation, and is horrified to see the kids
People
brutally
getting
kill each
wrecked
other for supplies.
right at the start.
Spotting a backpack on the edge of the field, she runs for it and manages to pick it up before heading straight into the tree line. The girl sprints further into the forest until she's far enough to safely catch her breath. Looking inside of her bag, she discovers basic supplies that will help keep her alive and starts taking inventory when suddenly a cannon goes off in the distance. This marks the death of a contestant, and counting the number of shots, she realizes that 12 kids have
12 are
died with
gone
12
already.
more to go.
Jeez.
Okay, this is obviously a trap. Rushing in for supplies is one of the biggest risks
dumb.
in the entire game because it
Stupid.
puts everyone in such close proximity to each other. Peeta here took the safest strategy by running in the
Run away
opposite
to the
direction, but
forest.
there's one problem with this.
He didn't
if
have
he
any
encounters
supplies.
someone in the forest, he won't have anything to defend himself with
Right.
and will be at a severe disadvantage. He also won't have any way to store water, which forces him to stay within walking distance from the river. This limits his movements during the game, and that's a huge weakness in his strategy. Now, the most important thing to realize is that there's no way to avoid risk in this game, so we need to be thinking about which risks are the smartest ones to take. These players were standing on their platforms for a full minute, which gave them
Before they
enough
did
time to
anything.
evaluate which items would be
What
the
to
easiest to
do.
grab. The bow is too close to the center of the cornucopia and wouldn't be worth the risk, but you can
Okay.
also see that on the edges of the field, there are plenty of bags that
Supply
are much
bags.
closer to them. The only competition for this bag here would be between 1 or 2 other players at most, and since neither of them have weapons yet, it's worth going for. Even if the only thing in the bag is a water bottle, it's still an
It's better
advantage
than-
over Peeta, who has nothing, and just
Better
one
than
added
nothing at
benefit
all.
like this gives you more options to work with.
Right,
Now,
right,
to
right.
make sure we reach the closest bag before anyone else, we're going to have to get our hands dirty. Instead of running straight for it, I would run directly at the closest player and knock them down. The momentum of their running will make this much easier to do, and with the time it takes for them to pick themselves back up, I'll be able to reach the bag and run into the woods without having to put up a fight. Katniss had 60 seconds to plan this very simple strategy out, but instead she froze, and she's lucky it didn't get her. Bag is a water bottle. It's still an advantage over Peeta, who has nothing, and just one added benefit like this gives you more options to work with. Now, to make sure we reach the closest bag before anyone else, we're going to have to get our hands dirty. Instead of running straight for it, I would run directly at the closest player and knock them down. The momentum of their running will make this much easier to do, and with the time it takes for them to pick themselves back up, I'll be able to reach the bag and run into the woods without having to put up a fight. Katniss had 60 seconds
Big
to plan this
brains.
very simple strategy out, but instead she froze, and she's lucky it didn't get her killed.
She
In
got
the
away
forest,
just in
Katniss
time.
manages to find herself some fresh water and starts creating animal traps to hunt for food. As the sky begins to get dark, she climbs up a tree and ties herself to the trunk. It's a smart way to keep herself from falling, but that's going to be the least of her problems. That night, she's woken up by a sound below and notices that someone has lit a fire in the
already-
distance. It's
someone's
the
in her
worst
area.
mistake that anyone could make. And moments later, a group of tributes find the
Pull
camp.
up on them.
A blood-curdling scream echoes through the forest, and another cannon is shot, making that 13 down with 11 more to
11
go.
11
Katniss
people to
spots the
go.
group of competitors walking
These
through the
kids are
woods.
savage,
This blonde
yo.
boy Kato calls out to one of his teammates, and the girl is shocked to see Peeta among them. They're using the boy to lead them to Katniss, and now there's no one left she can trust. The next day, she continues walking through the forest, trying to put as much distance between herself and the other players, but her plan is about to go horribly wrong. Katniss decides to take a rest in another tree, but she's suddenly woken up to find a wave of fire moving towards her. Panicking, she climbs down and runs away as fast as she can,
judges.
but the fire is following close behind.
Messing up her plan.
Sprinting downhill through the smoke, she falls into a creek and the flames can no longer reach her, but the girl has no idea that the game designers have driven her straight into a trap. Around the corner, the team of tributes approach the creek and suddenly spot her floating in the water. Desperate, the girl darts away and heads deeper into the forest as the gang of players chase after her. With nowhere to hide, she climbs up another tree for safety, but when the other players arrive, she realizes they have her cornered, and it's the perfect opportunity to take her out. Kato climbs up after her, but grabs a dead branch, snapping it as he falls off the tree. Furious, the kid grabs his teammate's bow and tries to shoot the girl, but his aim isn't good enough. That's when Peta interrupts the group, suggesting they wait her out. She'll starve to death if she doesn't come down, and they can kill her when she does. His teammates think it's a good idea and split up to get materials for a campfire. Okay, these boys are actually being pretty smart about this. They've banded together and are immediately going for Katniss, but Peta here is working with a completely different strategy. Right now he's playing two sides and is fooling everyone in the process. Somehow this kid has already managed to place himself in the safest group, given a free weapon, and has guaranteed his own survival for several days, which is a lot better than how Katniss is doing at the moment. Now, this girl is not going to be an easy kill, and waiting for her to starve is going to take a really long time. With this in mind, you might think the better strategy would be to take out all the weaker players first to scavenge their resources. This would eliminate more competition to increase your odds of survival, but that would be a big mistake. It might seem counterintuitive, but we have to remember that this is not just a death game, it's entertainment. Millions of people are watching how we behave and are deciding whether or not to cheer for our survival. If the first thing you do is hunt all of the weakest children, you'll be vilified and look like a bad guy. In fact, the game designer might make it even harder for you to succeed if he realizes that the public sentiment is against you. A smart game designer is going to give the audience exactly what they want, and that's why we need to play this carefully. It's worth pointing out that the age range of 12 to 18 makes this death game extremely unfair. A 12-year-old's body hasn't matured enough to have the strength or intelligence for this kind of challenge. As a result, killing young players will make for pretty miserable television because to these people, good TV means they're constantly surprised. They need to feel like anyone could win, and since most people would expect a 12-year-old to die, killing off the weak players first won't boost the audience's excitement. Every encounter in this game is a risk, regardless of your experience level. And even though a career tribute will have the best chance of surviving, all it takes is one mistake for them to get killed. The more players they have to fight, the more risk they take on. And we want to put as many obstacles in front of them before they get to us. The next day, Katniss wakes up in the tree and looks down at the other tributes still asleep. Suddenly, she hears someone whispering and notices a little girl hiding in the tree across from her. The player points at something above Katniss, and she looks up to find a wasp nest hanging directly over the sleeping tributes. Inside are genetically engineered wasps called Tracker Jackers, and Katniss realizes this will help her escape. Pulling out her knife, she starts to cut through the branch. The vibrations irritate the wasps who start attacking her, but Katniss refuses to give up. She finally saws through the branch and sends the nest falling out of the tree. Hitting the ground, it breaks open and the wasps go into a frenzy, attacking the tributes. Some of them manage to run away, but this girl falls to the ground, screaming in pain as the wasps sting her to death. That's 14 down, with 10 more to go. With the coast clear, Katniss tries to climb down the tree, but loses her footing and falls to the ground. The venom is taking effect, and as she fights through her hallucination, Katniss walks over to the dead girl and steals her bow and quiver. She starts to run away, but the venom is too much for her to handle, and she blacks out. Later, Katniss wakes up in a completely different part of the forest with her arms covered in leaves, but that's when she notices someone hiding behind a tree. Walking over to investigate, she finds Rue, the girl who told her about the nest, and realizes she saved her life. The two contestants share a meal together, and Katniss finds out she's been asleep for 2 whole days. During that time, one other player has died, but Peta is still alive. The little girl also tells her that a team of players have gathered all the remaining supplies and stored them near the lake, which makes it the perfect target for them to take out. Okay, Katniss really lucked out here. She found herself stuck in a tree surrounded by other tributes, and was guaranteed to get killed as soon as she came down. Then, she blacked out for 2 days, and the only reason she's still alive is because this 12-year-old girl dragged her body through the forest and knew enough about botanical pharmacology to heal her wounds. Rue here is a total badass, and is way more capable than the average 12-year-old. But a survival strategy based on the compassion of others is not going to win the Hunger Games. Katniss has every reason to be dead, but she had a much better way to avoid relying on pure luck here. Now, cutting down the Tracker Jacker nest was a good idea, but the problem here is that we will get stung just like everyone else. It's possible that Katniss didn't know that the wasp's venom can be deadly, but there was already enough information to tell her that these were not normal hornets. Altogether, she got stung at least 3 times, but even after a single sting, her voice was getting hoarse and her skin began swelling. These are extremely fast symptoms, and the insects are clearly too dangerous to be around. Now, with that in mind, trying to climb down the tree while the hive was still angrily swarming beneath her was not a wise decision, because the wasps don't see her any differently than the others. If it were me, I would have waited for the swarm to clear the area below first, since the swarm will chase the tributes as they run, and when it's finally time to climb down, there will be a lot fewer insects to run from. We also have the benefit of being tied down to the tree with this rope. If the wasp venom can act this quickly, we have no idea just how bad the symptoms will get, and passing out from hallucinations on the forest floor will leave us exposed to other tributes and more wasps to finish us off. As counterintuitive as it may sound, staying in the tree until the coast is clear might be the best solution. With enough time, the symptoms of the venom will stabilize, and we'll know when it's safe to climb down and escape without requiring any luck. The girls gather branches from the forest and plan to set a fire as a distraction. It's a clever idea, and Rue explains they can use the Mockingjays to signal each other since the birds will copy any noise they make. With the plan set, she hugs the little girl and reassures her they'll be okay, but this is a promise neither of them will be able to keep. Katniss hides in a bush and surveys the area, noticing strange mounds of dirt around the clearing. That's when these tributes see smoke rising in the distance and decide to split up, as one of them stays behind to keep watch. Suddenly, another tribute comes running towards the supplies, and she watches as the girl carefully jumps over the mounds. There must be landmines buried underneath, and now Katniss knows how to avoid their trap. The other girl takes a bag from the pile and makes her escape, but the kid standing guard notices her from the corner of his eye and leaves the supplies to follow her. Katniss sees a net of apples, and the girl fires an arrow that rips it open. The fruits go tumbling out and hit the ground, triggering the hidden landmines as they suddenly explode in a chain reaction. The blast sends the girl flying backwards as all the equipment is destroyed, leaving nothing behind. Suddenly, the career tributes come running back to find everything ruined, and Cato here is so furious that he snaps the guard's neck, making that 16 down with 8 more to go. Katniss runs away as fast as she can to reunite with Rue and heads deep into the forest. She whistles for the tribute and waits for her to respond, but there's no signal back. That's when she hears the girl screaming and runs to follow the sound of the girl's voice. Entering this clearing, she finds her friend trapped under a net and quickly cuts her free. Katniss hugs the girl, relieved that she's still alive, but that's when another tribute walks into the clearing. He throws his spear at Katniss, but misses, and the girl finishes him off with a single shot. But when she turns around to check on Rue, she's horrified to see her pull the spear out of her own chest. There's no way she's going to survive this, and the little girl collapses from shock. Realizing she's going to die, Rue tells Katniss she needs to win the Hunger Games before finally passing away. That's now 18 down, with 6 more to go. Katniss breaks down in tears, traumatized to see someone so young die in front of her, and decides to honor the girl by placing flowers in her hands. She's about to walk away, but in an act of defiance, the girl turns to the camera and raises 3 fingers for the world to see. In District 12, it's used to show respect to others, and in Rue's district, the citizens do the same salute back to Katniss. Okay, this was a terrible plan, and Rue's death is completely Katniss's fault. Using fire as a distraction makes sense, but there are several problems with this they didn't consider. First of all, setting a fire from scratch is not as simple as it might seem. As far as we know, neither of these girls have a lighter, so this fire has to be started using basic tools like flint rock or friction. To someone with only basic experience, it could take hours to turn a small spark into a fire big enough to cause a distraction. Even if they had 2 weeks of training, it's not an easy task. Now, the reason this matters is because the fire needs to be cleverly timed for Katniss to take advantage of the distraction. It's also a terrible idea because this distraction is being used to lure tributes towards it, and that means they're coming straight in Rue's direction. This 12-year-old girl is very capable, but she can't defend herself against a band of violent competitors. This entire plan is putting Rue here in an extremely vulnerable situation with nobody around to help protect her, and Katniss should have realized this would not work in the girl's favor. Now, finding a partner to cooperate with is a huge advantage in the Hunger Games. Rue is a valuable resource, so if I were in this situation, I would be looking for a way to make sure we both survive, and that means sticking together. Considering how far away the stockpile is, it makes more sense to help her start the fire and travel together to the camp, so that Rue can help keep an eye on any potential threats or ambushes. If they take a different path to avoid the tributes traveling towards them, they'll reach the stockpile at about the same time the tributes get to their fire. At that point, the camp will be left unprotected and the plan will still work, but with the benefit of having Rue there to help. Now, the last thing to consider is how to blow up the stockpile. Personally, I think it's worth doing because this thing gives the other tributes too much advantage over us for the rest of the game. One thing we have to consider is that by blowing up the stockpile, we will be left with only the resources we have on hand. That makes each arrow extremely valuable to us, and we can't afford to waste them unless we're getting something else out of it in return. But that's where this little girl comes into the plan. Right now, as long as Rue is alive, we need to protect her. But we also need her to be able to defend herself as well. From what it looks like, this girl doesn't really have a weapon, and if we only have a bow with a limited supply of arrows, blowing up the stockpile could still be a disadvantage to us because we will eventually run out of a way to hunt and defend ourselves. If it were me, I would wait for the guard to leave and have Rue run to the stockpile just like this girl did to find a new weapon. Once she's returned safely, we can shoot an arrow at the mine closest to the stockpile and blow the whole thing up with just a single shot. Since we've just seen how to avoid setting off the mines, it's not anywhere near the risk of leaving Rue out in the woods with no weapon and luring dangerous tributes towards her. As the rest of the world watches the Hunger Games from their homes, the citizens of Rue's district are honored by Katniss' show of support. It's an inspiring message of solidarity, and this one symbol creates a massive riot. People start rebelling against the Capitol, and the game designer is pressured to kill Katniss for starting the riots. Her mentor Haymitch convinces him to spare the girl, arguing that if she's alive to entertain the rioters, the districts will calm down and be too distracted to rebel. Later that day, Katniss hears an announcement telling the tributes that the rules have changed. Now 2 people are allowed to win the game, but they must be from the same district and survive until the end. Katniss realizes she won't have to kill Peeta now, and she runs off, desperate to find him. Heading to the river, Katniss finds a pool of blood on a rock and thinks it must be Peeta's. She follows the trail upstream and it stops right at this spot, but there's no sign of where he went. Suddenly, a hand grabs her leg and the girl realizes he's been hiding this whole time, having disguised himself to blend in with his environment. Katniss takes off the debris covering his body and hugs him, but when she checks his legs, the girl discovers a deep cut. They don't have anything to treat it, but she refuses to leave him here to die. She takes him to a nearby cave and lays him down inside, promising to get medicine for him. He knows there's a slim chance of finding any, but the girl's got a plan and kisses him on the cheek, putting on a show for all the sponsors to see. That night, they're woken up by another announcement that tomorrow, there will be a special gift for each player at the cornucopia. Katniss knows the medicine for Peeta's wound will be there, and with the boy too injured to move by himself, she has no choice but to go alone. The next day, Katniss scouts the cornucopia and sees a row of bags for each district left in the game. The girl's about to run in when another player suddenly sprints out of the cornucopia and takes one of them. There's only 3 bags left, and Katniss rushes for the table. She grabs the one for District 12, but just as she's about to leave, another player throws a knife that she dodges at the last second. Katniss tries to shoot her, but gets wrestled to the ground and can do nothing as the tribute locks her arms and brags about killing her friend. Suddenly, the other player from Rue's district sneaks up from behind and grabs a hold of her before slamming her head into the wall. That's 19 down, with 5 more to go. The player spares Katniss as thanks for helping Rue and runs into the forest. Heading back to the cave where she left Peeta, Katniss opens the container and rubs the medicine into the boy's wound. When she's finished, Peeta takes some of the ointment and applies it to the cut on her forehead. It's a tender moment between them, and the girl is thankful that he's here with her, but the Hunger Games has one last challenge they'll have to survive. Okay, despite how it looks right now, it's worth mentioning that Peeta has been the smartest player in the game. He's quickly adapted to each situation the Hunger...
Look at this. Look at how he's hidden, bro. If that ain't the smartest thing ever.
That Peeta has been the smartest player in the game. He's quickly adapted to each situation the Hunger Games presented to him, and if you look at his track record, it's pretty on point. First, he abandoned the cornucopia and ran for hiding to prioritize his short-term survival, which is not a bad strategy. Next, he got caught by the other tributes and immediately offered to sell out Katniss in exchange for them sparing his life. Then, he got hurt, but instead of letting it become a weakness, he seamlessly disguised himself in nature to wait for the tributes to kill each other off. Nothing came easy for him, but he found a way to survive each difficulty, and that makes him far more capable than Katniss. This girl's very smart, but so much of her success has been dependent on Haymitch working on her behalf, Rue rescuing her, and pure blind luck. Now, at the moment, Peeta is at a disadvantage because he's badly wounded and needs medicine. But if there was one mistake these two made, it was not doing their homework. On the first day of training, the instructor advised them not to ignore their survival skills, because even though everyone wants to practice fighting, as much as 10% of the players die from infection and 20% die from dehydration. This was a huge piece of information, and yet nobody took this seriously enough to ask for more details or incorporate this knowledge into the survival strategy. There was one way, however, that doesn't require knowledge of plants or botanical pharmacology that Katniss could have used to help Peeta recover. If Katniss knows how to make a fire, then she should be able to cauterize his wound, because it's been a successful method to remove diseased tissue for centuries. The ancient Greeks use it frequently to prevent the spread of infection-causing bacteria, and it's not a stretch in logic to think that they could have reached this conclusion. If it were me, I would have immediately assumed that the game's announcement offering a special gift is a trap. With so few players, they would need ways to get them in the same place and force them to fight each other. And a death game, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And I would have cauterized Peeta's wounds and gone to investigate the gift at the cornucopia later in the day. The next day, Katniss and Peeta wake up, discovering that their wounds have fully healed. Since they're the only team left, they have the best chance of winning, but it won't turn out how they think. They leave the cave to find food and split up, with Peeta foraging for berries while Katniss hunts animals. She's about to shoot down a bird when she hears a cannon go off, and knowing that someone must have died, runs back to look for the boy. She finds a pile of dark berries left on his jacket and fears the worst. Screaming his name, she crashes into Peeta, who is still alive, and scolds him for picking poisonous nightlocks. Katniss was terrified that he ate them and hugs him, relieved that he's still alive. Later, the players discover the body of a tribute who died from eating the poisonous berries, making that 20 down with 4 more to go, and it gives Katniss a clever idea. She takes the fruits just in case they can use them on the other competitors, but she'll soon be using them to hack the game. That night, Katniss suddenly hears a strange howling and another tribute screaming in pain. A cannon goes off, announcing another player's death, and that's 21 down with 3 more to go. They continue walking through the woods when they're ambushed by this massive creature who pounces on Peeta. Katniss fires an arrow at it, and the monster lets go of the boy. The two players run away as fast as they can, putting as much distance between themselves and the monsters, but more of them start appearing. They head for the clearing where the cornucopia is and climb up the structure, escaping just in time, but they're not the only ones there. Cato takes them by surprise and throws down Katniss while Peeta wrestles with them. They try to fight out the other tribute, but he's too skilled and overpowers them. Peeta pulls him off Katniss, and the girl manages to draw her bow, but Cato has already taken Peeta hostage. It looks like a hopeless situation, but then Katniss shoots the boy in the hand. He lets go of Peeta and gets pushed off the roof, sending him over the edge where the monsters eat him alive. That's 22 down, with only 2 more to go. Katniss and Peeta have become the official winners of the Hunger Games. They get down from the structure, wondering why the competition hasn't ended, when they suddenly hear an announcement. The rules have changed again, and now only one person can leave this arena alive. It's a cruel way for the Capitol to make the show more dramatic, and Peeta offers to sacrifice himself, but Katniss refuses. She pulls out the poisonous berries from earlier, and the kids decide that no one will win this game. They're about to eat them when another announcement stops them from poisoning themselves and congratulates them as the winners of the 74th Hunger Games. The two are taken back home to District 12, where they're celebrated as heroes, but what they don't know is that they have the worst celebrity couple name in the world.
But what do you think? How would you beat the Hunger Games? Let me know with a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos like this. Until next time, have a damn good day.
You too, my friend, the legend himself. Great video, guys. Bang off a video. I remember watching the Hunger Games back in the day. Like I said, a great movie. And yeah, man, great series of movies. Cinema summary as always with the crazy analyses for this one. A lot of great ideas. Let me know in the comment section, would you guys have survived the Hunger Games, bro? Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, let me know what you thought of my reaction down in the comment section. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, 100 likes. And I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.